I just want to sit and talk about the Julian Assange case for a bit. You know, the WikiLeaks guy, the WikiLeaks founder, because it's really important what is happening here right now, and it's interesting just sort of how this one case ties into so many different things, and I think it's important for us to understand how all this shit connects. But yeah, I feel like the basics of the case is pretty well known, right? So I don't really want to be getting into all of that too much. But I will say that WikiLeaks, you know, Julian, they really did expose governmental truths and crimes from around the world. But the US are the only ones that have pressed charges against him. So this case right now is about the Iraq and Afghanistan war logs, which were leaked back in 2010, I think. Yeah, 2010. So, yeah, you know, he exposed war crimes committed by the US government. So the latest on the case is the extradition to the US, which he was potentially facing to, you know, to face like a longer sentence and harsher conditions in the American prison system. So last week the judge ruled against this. She rejected it because if he was to be sent over, he was at too much of a risk of taking his own life because of like how brutal the prison system is there. And this is really good that he wasn't sent over, and it was a lot of optimism for the case and for him and, you know, just generally for everybody. It is really good. But I feel like it's important to say that the decision was not made on the basis that he deserves to walk free and that he's innocent. You know, the judge agreed with all of the charges that were pressed against him by the Trump administration. He still remains in Belmarsh prison in solitary confinement, you know, right now. He's basically been in solitary confinement for the last 9 years, you know, in the embassy and now in Belmarsh. He's suffered enough. He suffered a lot. But the extradition was so dangerous because it was the first time ever that the US were using the Espionage Act against a journalist. You know, he was going to be locked up and extradited, locked up for 175 years in a supermax prison for doing the job of any journalist, you know, revealing truth. And that's why they wanted to have him sent over, because the truth was a threat to them. You know, this guy, he's not even an American citizen, so to be treated in the American system, it don't make any fucking sense. It's the Trump administration that want to have him locked up, and that have got him locked up, and that are trying to get him extradited. But both parties want this guy punished and want this guy extradited and want this guy like rotting in a cell, because the truth is a threat to both of them. You know, all of the people that supported the wars and all of the people that profited from the wars. So with this particular case, you know, neither party, you know, Republican, Democrat, neither is more humane than the other. And this is because, you know, he questioned loads of shit that was going on behind closed doors, which us lot, we didn't know was happening, but it was being done in our names. Well, in this case, it was being done in Americans' names. And because he questioned it and presented it to the world, you know, this is why he's being punished. And this is why they're like, okay, cool, so we're going to make this guy illegal, we're going to scapegoat this guy, and we're going to discredit, you know, all of the stuff that he provided to the world, and we're going to claim that he's not even a journalist, you know. And it's so dangerous to be doing this, because to frame him like, you know, as a criminal, as somebody that crossed the boundaries and went too far, you know, and did too much, like committed some fucking crime because of what he like leaked. It's basically saying that, you know, journalism is a crime if you go against what we don't want you to show, you know, and the job of any investigating journalist should be to go beyond what is fucking expected. So you can't really distinguish what Julian did at WikiLeaks, you know, and what any other journalist does. If their aim is to actually think critically and to, you know, question truth. So locking away this one guy is saying, you know, okay, cool, you know, us, the government, you know, the ruling class, you know, those in power, we decide when journalism is a crime, you know, when telling the truth is a crime, you know, which is the opposite to what these countries, these superpowers claim that they have and which they uphold with the freedom of press and freedom of speech. You know, it's bullshit. It's bullshit because it shows how power has and is being abused by deciding who gets locked up. You know, to lock someone up for 175 years, or the conditions of Belmarsh prison, you know, to keep them in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day, no contact, no access to literature, you know, nothing. The conditions are designed to destroy a person, you know, whether that be physically, where you take your own life, or mentally, where you lose any last bit of sanity. It's hard to say that he wouldn't be, and that anybody wouldn't be a risk of suicide, you know, under those conditions, because these conditions and these environments, they're not built for like living things, you know. It's like, it's just common sense. This is what happens because there's no sense of truth and accountability for this shit. You know, the government don't have him locked up because they think he's some like threat to society. Like, what the fuck? They're doing it because he's a threat to them, and because they're protecting their own backs and their crimes. It's, for me, this trial is so important and urgent because it doesn't only have implications for Julian, you know, for like whistleblowers. It don't, you know, the shit that we've just seen, it don't only have implications for him, but of course it's going to have huge implications, and it's so dangerous for, you know, journalists all over, and just for the media. You know, singling out this one person, it's a way of being like, you can be a journalist, cool, but just don't touch on, you know, the topic of war. Just don't touch on the things that you're not supposed to talk about. You know, don't talk about the military-industrial complex, and if you do, here are the repercussions. So just don't do it. And, you know, just seeing where this case right now continues is a big indication as to where we all go moving forward. 100% with like the freedom of press, the freedom of speech, you know, like freedom of thought, you know, our mind. What do we have power and control of thinking over for ourselves? You know, which way are we gonna go? Is it old school shit, or are we gonna be going forward and not criminalizing the wrong people for doing like all the right things? You know, like what our governments are doing behind our backs in our names. You know, what the fuck can we speak up on? Like censorship on the social media. It's massive because like all them things, like it's happening, and we can see how it's shifting and changing like more and more in time. And this case ties into those things like so much, 100%. You know, the guy that said, don't kill these Afghanis and these Iraqis, they're not my people, but that don't matter. Like, just killing them is wrong. They're making this guy the monster. And it's just about questioning if this is the world we want to live in. You know, this cannot be the example that is set. This cannot become the norm, because then I don't really see how the whole, you know, freedom and justice thing is actually going to work. I really don't, because if this is the example that is set, you know, where valuable truth has you punished, where exposing truth about war criminals, has you painted out to be the monster. You know, keep closing the doors on important information that we need to know about. And, you know, there's so many things that we're just not allowed to talk about. Like, if we just keep closing the door on that stuff and avoiding certain conversations, you know, we're not going to be really progressing in the way that we should be. You know, fuck that. It's really simple, you know, what is happening is really simple. He's a white person that attempted to fight and question a white system. You know, he's being punished because of what it's built on. If we whittle this shit down to what's happening, it's that, okay, war criminals are imprisoning him and punishing him and making him out to be a monster. It's just like saying that this is what happens to someone who's on the side of truth, who is on the side of justice, who is on the side of empathy. He was advocating for peace. You know, nobody should have to put their freedom at risk for speaking truth. You know, fighting for fucking something. He sent valid information out to the world. He didn't fucking kill anyone. He was the one saying that killing is not okay. You know, saying that we can't normalise this. He didn't benefit from this at all. No money ended up in his pocket. At the end of the day, he just said that killing kids, killing families, splitting up families, like destroying schools, destroying homes, none of this fucking shit is okay. It's not fucking okay, and we know this. I think, like, for me, it's about questioning. It's like, the question is that how do you incriminate the criminal when they are the law? I don't know if that makes sense. How do you incriminate the criminal when they are the law? Or how do you incriminate the law when the law is on the side of the criminal? And it's difficult. It is difficult because you come to realise that they're all on the same side. So it's difficult where to navigate this whole situation. And I feel like when it comes, you know, for me, when it comes to holding leaders accountable, it's important, you know, to be careful with who we celebrate and settle for. As president, for example, you know, in the case of America, whether we see a new face occupying the White House, who might be like really fucking smiley and might look like our idea of progress, if that person is a war machine, you know, and they're happy to fund wars abroad through tanks or through drones or whatever the fuck it is, then nothing changes. And we're delusional if we choose to ignore this and paint them out to be something that they're not, you know. I do think, you know, unfortunately, I get it because the political climate is so shit right now, so I do get it, you know, finding settlement in people like, you know, Kamala Harris and Biden, and seeing that as like some sort of progression. But for me, like, the election last year, wow, the election was only preventing another step backwards. You know, I don't see it as moving forward when these people know that people are still going to be dying, you know, whether that be through poverty in America amongst like the black community, for example, or whether that be through like the thousands of people that can't afford basic healthcare, or whether that be through, you know, the prison industrial complex or the military industrial complex, you know, like, it's just not progression when they consciously know that people are going to be dying. Like, put this money and put the money from policing into communities that need it, then we might be onto something. And I think that it's important to make it clear that we're opposed to what, you know, is happening and what our governments are funding. Like, for example, I think it's difficult to talk about, like, refugee and immigration issues that we see here in in the West without actually discussing what makes a refugee. You know, they don't choose to come here. We know that. So if we're here for the rights and protection of refugees, you know, we need to be ready to bring all of this stuff in our political discussions, and, you know, we need to understand how the West, how our countries, how, you know, our governments are, how they benefit from the wars and the bloodshed. I really do think that if we are to discuss the concept of activism, you know, standing up to far-right governments, for example, it's important to be standing up to, you know, state oppression or oppression, you know, generally. You know, like, these wars are promoted by Western interests, done by our governments, and I think that if we want to live in a world which is progressing and healing wounds from the past and protecting human rights, you know, people, it can't be limited to our own environment or our own experiences. You know, it's just not good enough. But yeah, I guess this is where, like, positionality plays into all of it and stuff like that. But, you know, I do think that empathy is how we unite and understand one another across the world, you know. So we all have souls, and I think that empathy enables us to, you know, really unite. So your empathy cannot be limited to, you know, your own country or city or state. You know, we know that death and pain is not nice on another living thing. You know, we all have a soul. So the thing that applies itself to every single revolution or political action or political struggle is that, you know, we want balance, we want equals, you know, we want equality, we don't want people dying. So it's important to stand up, you know, with humans everywhere, because it's all connected. And the reason why I say this is because of the, you know, I think, like, turning a blind eye on stuff that isn't happening, you know, in our country or in, like, America or whatever. I think with this case with Julian Assange, it's about how it connects to all of us. It's important, you know, not only what was exposed, but also the implications of questioning it, and, you know, how it connects to us. It's a political trial for truth, you know, for example, as to whether we're going to move forward and see, like, you know, progression, you know. I don't know, man. I really don't know. But, you know, it's important because it's happening in the now. All of this stuff is happening in the now. I'm going to end it positively, because if you can, you've got to bring optimism to the shitty times. I will say that it's been, you know, really cool and inspiring to see all the activism and energy and anger in keeping this case alive over the years, which has been going on, like, way beyond, like, I even remember. It's this stuff which will hopefully have him freed, you know, because the media have done, you know, a really shit job at reporting this. You know, all the journalists that benefited from WikiLeaks years ago have not said shit. You know, they ain't done shit now. So it's up to us, the little people, to be fighting for, you know, the victims of what happened, and, you know, the people that get locked up for exposing it, and, you know, and just fighting for the future, you know, protecting truth, fighting for truth, because truth needs to be protected, it needs to be held up high, I think, you know, more than ever, you know, with fake news and stuff like that. But yeah, man, it's just, it's about, I think the world is changing so quickly, so I think everything feels quite scatty, but I think something is brewing. I think things seem possible sort of now more than ever, in a weird way, because there doesn't really seem like an alternative. So, you know, it's got to be something happening. And I think a massive part of progress is about acknowledging the difficulties of it. That's definitely something which I've come to realise, and that's okay, that it's okay to acknowledge the difficulties of progress in this world. It's okay, but yeah, it all comes down to the individual and then a collective thing. You know, there's so many people out there with so much juicy optimism and energy, so many good ideas about how to make a better world. But yeah, hope that Julian will be freed sooner rather than later. But yeah, we'll see in it. I'm optimistic, I'm definitely optimistic. But we will see. Third eye vision, what happens, what manifests. Gotta stay hopeful, stay optimistic for the future.